to Madeleine at the Movies, the Golden Days film review segment, designed to make you feel a little more informed when it comes to choosing what to watch next. I'm Madeleine Swain. I don't know quite how he's done it, but Christopher Nolan has achieved that status where any new film he makes is absolutely front page news, and all that anyone will speak about cinema-wise as soon as it's released. And yes, he's certainly made some excellent films, but even the best of them share some less than appealing qualities, in my view anyway. The first and most obvious being that he must be the most po-faced writer-director ever. The second is his less than stellar facility at writing or directing female characters. His new film is, of course, The Odyssey, and it's to be commended if for no other reason than it's got people excited and talking about a classical text from around the 8th century BC. And the hype about The Odyssey is all the more remarkable when you remember that The Return, covering similar territory and directed by Umberto Pasolini, was released just last year. And that filmmaker is no relation to Pier Paolo Pasolini, by the way, famed agitator and director of films like Salo and The Decameron, but he is the great-nephew of Visconti, of The Leopard and Death in Venice fame. Back to the films. The Return starred Ralph Fiennes and Juliette Binoche and received strong reviews, but was strictly an art house affair, with a global box office of under $4 million. The expectations for the opening week of The Odyssey are nearly $260 million. Now, this isn't the time or place to dig deeply into the reasons for that. Suffice to say, Nolan's name clearly has a massive impact. Coming off the back of Oppenheimer, and with memorable titles like Interstellar, Dunkirk, Inception and the Dark Knight trilogy, I suppose that's understandable. But it's hard not to compare The Odyssey with The Return, and in at least some respects come out in favour of the latter. But let's start with what's impressive about The Odyssey. At nearly 3 hours, it covers a lot of the narrative from Homer's text. Using frequent flashbacks, it recounts both the end of the Trojan War, thanks to that wooden horse ruse, but also the later years when Odysseus gets lost on his way back to Ithaca, where wife Penelope and son Telemachus are waiting for him. The flashbacks are introduced via the device of a bard, played by US rap artist Travis Scott, standing tall and declaiming to the crowds of unwelcome suitors who are making the most of Penelope's hospitality as she waits in Ithaca for her long-lost, presumed dead, husband's return. Through this lens, we see a conveyor belt of set pieces. Odysseus and his crew's encounters with various monsters and challenges. Polyphemus, the Cyclops, the giant Lestrygonians, the Sirens and Circe, with each episode reducing crew numbers until Odysseus is the last man standing. Some of these sequences are the high points of Nolan's film, especially the design of Polyphemus, with an interesting and unusual take on a one-eyed countenance, and the whole section where Circe turns the crew into pigs. Samantha Morton gives a really nuanced and compelling performance of Circe, perhaps one of the best in the film. But there are disappointments with these magical adventures too. The sirens are barely glimpsed, and Odysseus' long sojourn with Calypso, played by an uncharacteristically laid-back Charlize Theron, lacks impact. The character of Odysseus could also be said to lack the many shades of the source text. Odysseus as written has many traits, but there are a couple that should really stand out. He's wily and cunning, which is how he survives the many challenges that are thrown at him, but also prone to hubris. His taunting of Polyphemus, the son of Poseidon, gets right up the sea god's nose and causes all sorts of problems for the Ithacan. As written by Nolan and played by a muscled and grim-faced Matt Damon, we only really get the resilient, homesick and courageous view of Odysseus. It's fair to say that this is similar to the way he was presented in The Return, with Ralph Fiennes in the role, but as the title suggests, that film focused on the latter part of the story and didn't include all the battles and adventures. In the same way, we only get a fairly narrow view of Penelope, played by Anne Hathaway. And I question her casting too, no matter how talented an actor she is. Yes, she's strictly the right age, with Odysseus away for 20 years, 10 fighting the Trojan War and another 10 trying to get home. But the wonderful Juliette Binoche in The Return just has that much more world weariness and disappointment behind her eyes. Also, Nolan's predilection for putting together a starry cast means that Penelope and Odysseus' son, Telemachus, is played by the 30-year-old Tom Holland, meaning Penelope was a child when she had him. It's a bit of a throwback to that ridiculous Hollywood habit of casting women as the mothers of men close to their age. Remember Angelina Jolie in Alexander, Sally Field in Forrest Gump, Angela Lansbury in The Manchurian Candidate, Glenn Close in the Mel Gibson Hamlet. I could go on. But yet again, Nolan isn't terribly interested in his female characters. It's Morton alone, I think, that manages to make something more of what she's been given in the screenplay. Technically, the film is something of a triumph, although the overwhelming impression is of a rather grey and brown piece of work. But the sound design, with its thumping crescendo-laden score from Ludwig Göransson and the furious camera work from Hoyte van Hoytema, are certainly attention-grabbing in the fight sequences. Though I think there's a case to be made that if the film is seen on the huge IMAX screen, this approach can almost become overwhelming. The sound is so intense, the seats shake, and the rapid cutting of shaky close-ups from an IMAX camera can actually be quite hard to watch. I even found myself having to look away from the screen at times. I do suspect, however, that this is an age-related issue. My 25-year-old son had no problem with this at all. And it's fair to say that he loved the film and was captivated throughout. So perhaps it's more of a young person's offering, and one that, like many Nolan films, skews to the male demographic too. Whereas older viewers may find themselves rudely shaken out of ancient Greece as soon as Telemachus starts talking about his dad, and other characters use expressions like, "Are you okay?" and "Let's go." And the American accents also hark back to the less convincing elements of traditional Hollywood spectacles too. On the whole, it is worth seeing on a big screen, but I think even without the monsters and mayhem, I prefer The Return, and Dunkirk remains my favourite Christopher Nolan film so far. The Odyssey is rated M and runs for 172 minutes. As it was entirely shot by IMAX cameras and was intended for that screen, Melbourne's IMAX, the second biggest screen of its type in the world, the biggest is in Germany, is the best place to see it. But it's sold out there until at least next month, apparently. And in the meantime, you can see it pretty much everywhere else. And frankly, if loud soundtracks cause you any grief, that may be a better option. Now, if a lot of Homer isn't your thing, there are other options, such as the Nordic Film Festival, currently underway at Palace Cinemas, and including films from Denmark, Sweden, Norway, Finland, and Iceland. I've caught a few of them, and there's some great variety there. Mads Mikkelsen again shows his huge versatility as a man on the spectrum with a criminal brother and an abusive father in the past, leading to criminality and plenty of gore and black humour in The Last Viking. There's a film that has another take on that old high flyer, trips up and runs back home with her tail between her legs to be confronted by past traumas, friendships and loves before discovering that it may be where the heart is after all. That's Julie Schauffel's Home. Being Bo Widerberg is an informative and well-researched documentary about that renowned Swedish director, forever considered the country's second most important filmmaker after Ingmar Bergman, and director of, among other things, Elvira Madigan, which is also screening in the festival, by the way, as is his award-winning Raven's End. On the historical front, there's The Kidnapping of a President, an almost farcical tale of a would-be coup and regime change plot that is based on true events from the early 1930s. Fascinating viewing for anyone interested in Finnish history, particularly the period after the Civil War there of 1918. Perhaps best of all for film buffs is a retrospective screening of the aforementioned Bergman's landmark 1966 drama, Persona. Perhaps the film that cemented my love of non-mainstream cinema when I saw it as a teenager and realised there was not only life outside Hollywood, but there was sheer brilliance. Always worth another viewing or discovering for the first time if you're yet to experience it. The Nordic Film Festival is screening at Palace Cinemas across the country now, and in Melbourne it runs until the 2nd of August. Pick up a programme or visit nordicfilmfestival.com.au for more details. And that's all from me for this time. Remember that you can catch up with any missed reviews at the website, madelineatthemovies.com.au. Madeleine at the Movies was produced and edited by Blair Purvis. Stay safe and well, and thanks for listening.